Welcome to the podcast. Appreciate you tuning in today. Very excited to have my friend Beto Rosario, killer guitarist. If you're familiar with his music, I'm sure many of you are. He has played guitar for 25 to Life, Madball, Marauder, Asphyxiation, and most recently Ayanyss, which I was just told I'm saying correctly. So go me. Beto,
go.
What's up?
Hey, nothing much, man. Having a good time over here with you, Mike.
I know. I feel like this is overdue in a way. I love chatting with you. We never fucking talk. We've hung out like twice.
Yes.
Ever.
And we've known each other forever.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have an interesting connection. Your lovely wife is the lovely sister of one of my oldest friends ever.
Yeah.
So we're friends through marriage.
Exactly.
We're like cousins through marriage or something. Well, yeah, welcome to coming to the show, man. I appreciate that. You're on vacation this week. Normally you would be dealing with really angry people. You're an insurance adjuster by day.
Yeah. I would be dealing with very angry victims of collision losses.
And what are they most, so the calls that you get, the most irate, frustrated calls, what do they sound like?
Well, usually it wasn't my fault. It was somebody else's fault. But I deal more in face-to-face interactions because I actually go out and look at the damaged cars, and then deal with the body shops and, things like that. So I'm not so much on the phone, the person that you would call if you got into an accident. I'm the guy that actually goes out there and takes care of business.
I would assume it's quite a different tune, what someone's willing to say on the phone, and then when you roll up, what someone is willing to say to your face. It's almost like what a lot of people are dealing with social media, where you can be really loud and brash and frustrated on social media, but chances are, maybe not, if you would approach that person and have that conversation face to face, it would be slightly different, maybe a little less aggressive. Yeah. Or maybe not. I don't know. What do you see out there?
It's you kind of feel, the same way as a parent, you could tell when your kid's telling the truth or not. So I've been doing it for so long that I could kind of tell when something's not right. But I usually don't. I'm not going to tell them that in this day and age. You're not going to tell somebody, hey, listen, you're full of it.
Well, that's not your job either,
it's not,
in a
right?
way. But your compass is sharp.
Right.
What are some of the tells that someone is totally bullshitting and trying to extort money from an insurance company?
Well, how about this one? If this was a body shop doing this, I go to a body shop, I see a picture of a car. No, I see the car at the body shop, tons of damage all over it. And then I tell the customer, hey, could you send me a picture of your car at the loss? Yeah,
What does that mean, at the loss?
When the accident happened, so they get out, they'll take a picture, and then they'll send me a picture, and I look at it, and there's less damage in the picture, and I'm like, ooh, things like that. So, but with customers telling me stuff, I mean, I've had people that they'll say somebody hit him, it'd be like a hit and run, and then when I go to their house, I could tell that they hit the garage. I could see the paint going there, but what are you going to do?
So you get to do a little bit of Columbo work.
Yeah, a little bit of Columbo work. Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
What is the percentage of people who are bullshitting, in your estimation, in your experience?
Not a lot anymore. I'm imagining back in the day, it was probably a lot. Most people are honest right now. I run into a situation like that maybe 3 times a year that I run into it. I mean, some other people may run into more. Maybe they see me and they don't want to lie.
You got that tell the truth face or else?
I give them a look like The Rock, and I'm like, come on, man.
I can picture that. That's the person who rolls into the, rolls in with the neck brace that doesn't need the neck brace. It's like that old school move, right?
Yeah. I've had that too when I first started, when I was a lot younger. I had a guy with comes in. I was working at a body shop for an insurance company. They would come in and bring the cars almost like a drive-in. So this guy comes in with a neck brace. His girlfriend's there. She's rubbing his back. And he's moaning. He's like, oh, So I said,
because that
all right.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
That's normal.
So I said, all right, let me go see your car. So I go, what happened? He's like, I got rear-ended. Oh, so I get underneath the back of his car. His frame rails are rusted out, but they didn't break. So no damage on the car. The frame rails didn't collapse, even though a quarter of them was missing from corrosion. And I remember just looking at the guy going, geez, man, don't ever go to Hollywood. You don't have a career in acting. It's not going to happen. Something like that, what are you going to do, I told him, I said, there's nothing wrong with your car, and, you could take it for a second opinion, but I don't see anything. And that was that,
Oh, and then you gave him something else to get his back rubbed about.
I'm hurting, man. Yeah.
When did you... How did you get into that line of work?
That was, I used to work at Merrill Lynch. So in Merrill Lynch, I was in the banking area of Merrill Lynch. So dealing with like fraud and checks, all sorts of things like that. And it was too far away. The company moved out to like Hopewell. And I was doing this while I was doing music. While I was playing in Madball, I was also working at Merrill Lynch. I would just go on vacation and come back. And what happened was the drive was too much. And Mark actually called one day. Mark used to work at Geico. I don't know if you remember.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mark Bennett, everyone, who we had on the podcast maybe about 5 or so episodes ago. You should check that one out. Shout out to Mark. We love you. We're probably going to talk some shit about you today.
We love you, Mark.
It's all love.
But he called and he said, hey, you know what? Geico's going to New Jersey. Why don't you sign up to be an insurance adjuster? You get a car and you go out. He knew that I like being out and about. So I put in for it. I got the job. I left Merrill Lynch and I started with Geico. I stayed there for like 3 years and then I left and went to another company.
But that was the same industry.
Same industry, yeah, exactly.
And the Merrill Lynch gig, that wasn't that was in an office?
That was in an office. And you know what? Those guys were great. But I don't like being indoors all day, I like being outside in the sun.
No, it's a drag being trapped in one spot for sure. I've struggled with that with various jobs. Actually, I worked out in the Hopewell area, and so is my wife. So I know that area really well. There's a lot of farms.
Yeah.
A lot of cows.
Yeah,
and a lot of like pharmaceutical and insurance.
Exactly.
Giants. Yeah. Sort of set up shop out there because there's a lot of land.
Yeah.
There's space.
I think our office was Pennington Road or something like that.
Yeah, that's where a lot of those places are.
Yeah,
it's interesting. You go out there and things are much less developed, but at the same time, some of the most developed companies, that's where their headquarters are at, or where they have a hub.
Yeah, well, you could build a lot over there, and it's right next to Princeton. So my guess is that's why they go there, because there's companies that they deal with are close by, right in the next town.
Yeah, Princeton's got that swank address, not unlike Manhattan. It's got that kind of feel to it. Well, that's interesting. What you said when you were is this the time? So when you left Merrill Lynch, is this the time? So you're playing with Madball. Is this also the time when you were maybe gigging and touring the most? Take us through sort of that period of your musical life.
It was. Well, I was gigging and touring with 25 to Life as well. That was earlier on, like 95, 96. But with Madball, that was I was a lot busier with the touring. That was about 8 months out of the year. So with Merrill Lynch, it would be one of those things where I would say to them, hey, are you guys sure that you don't want me to leave and maybe I'll come back another day? They said, no, Rob, do all your touring, come back, when you're done. I'd say, okay, it was great. So, I'd go out on these tours and, it would be like you do a month here and then you're home for a few weeks and then it's like, hey guys, now you're going to go to Australia, Japan, and then you leave again and now you're gone for like, I don't know, a month and a half again. So it would be like that. It would be broken up, it wasn't a constant thing. But
not easy to keep a steady schedule at a job.
Exactly. Yeah, not easy, and I would feel bad. I'd tell them, hey, listen, I completely understand because this is what I do, but they were okay with it. If you look at the record I did with Madball, Hold It Down record, and you look on the thank list, you'll see where it says thanks to my friends at Merrill Lynch. And that was because one of the things they said was, they said, Rob, don't worry, just thank us on the record. All right, I was like, well, there's so many of you. I'm not going to put like 30 names on there, so I'll just put like a thanks to my friends at Merrill Lynch.
That's even lower than like, I'll give you a point on the record. That's like, yeah, I get you on that thanks.
Very generalized, right? Nah, but they were very cool, but
Well, that's key. I've had so many experiences in my life where it seems like we have a lot of parallels where I was going for it musically, but at the same time, I realized I needed to keep one foot in, I don't want to say reality, but in a future, a business, something that can pay bills outside of gigs, something that has a future for health insurance and all these things. So it sounds like we're similar in that respect. And I was always I was very lucky too. Most of the companies I worked for, they were very supportive, or just were like straight up. It's worse if you're like unsure, or if you're afraid to be like, hey, I got this opportunity. And what are they gonna say? Most people are cool.
I think that in anything in life, if you're very upfront with anybody, situations will be a lot better. So for instance, you have a boss, and you tell your boss exactly where you're coming from, and to say, hey, listen, this is my passion, it's what I like to do. I do like this job, but you tell them straight up, hey, listen, if it's not working for you, I understand. And I think that when you put it to people like that, good things will come to you, because that they'll respect you. I think that if you beat around the bush and give them excuses and then do what you want, that's where things go south. So
that's a great point. Just being real with people, even if you're not in a position of power, like you're talking to a boss or you're talking to a superior at a job that maybe has sway over whether you're working there or not. Just being real with people.
Yeah, that's it, man.
But it's kind of amazing the amount of people who don't, are like, no. Yeah. I'm afraid. Either it's a fear thing, afraid to express yourself, or maybe a lot of times it's people don't even know what they want. So they're just like, tell me what to do, and I'll keep my feelings to myself. You tell me what to do. I don't know how I learned early on to just express like what's up. And it doesn't mean that things are going to work out, but you're absolutely right. I think in business and in partnerships, people respect that. They instantly know where you're coming from. Right. And moving forward, if you say something in the future, they know that it's real. Like, okay, that's what's up.
Well, they're going to know if you're beating around the bush. I mean, anybody that's in a position of management or owns a company has been around enough people to know when they've got somebody that's not giving them the full story, and so you're better off just laying it out.
You're better off laying it out. And it's amazing too, because often being so open and really expressing yourself, as long as you have the skills and the social intelligence to get through that stuff, a lot of times that'll open up other opportunities too.
Exactly.
They're like, well, this isn't going to work out, but you know what? I know this person, or hey, there's this other job, or hey, have you ever thought about this other position within the company? Just being real and being friendly really goes a long way, because technical things in a job, unless it's very, very technical work, can be learned. Like this, most people can learn. I mean, I'm not going to do like neurosurgery anytime soon, or become something else that's really technical, but give me a couple weeks to spend some time on it. I'll get there.
Yeah.
And I think most people are like that.
I always did some type of work while I did music, even when I was a kid, so you figure, in the, I would say in the mid 90s, I would temp in Wall Street. So I'd work in purchase and sales, on the floor, doing all stuff, messenger work, whatever I could do. And I'd be around these type of people. So I kind of learned, hey, this is how you got to be. You got to be straight up with people, handle business. And then I'd go back to my band, go do a few tours, come back, go to the temp agency, end up at another company, and I think I got that discipline where like, I think a lot of musicians are like, F that, I'm just going to leave the job. And I always felt like, you know what, I could learn something here while also doing music.
That's wise.
You know,
That's wise, because there's so many parallels between across industries that you wouldn't assume. And you were sort of in some really contrasty industries. I mean, you take Wall Street, and then you take a very pure, local to the Northeast, New York in particular, hardcore scene. Most people would not think of all the parallels between those two things, but there's a million parallels when it comes to working together, being upfront about things, leadership skills, communication skills, being upfront and direct when it's not always easy or comfortable to do so, which is all the time. A lot of people will just keep their mouths shut. I assume it's pretty wild on the floor at Wall Street, so like it's probably not unlike a pit, right? Like,
well, back in those days, what I would do is I would key. I wasn't a trader. I would key in the trades.
What does that mean? Key in the trades?
Well, back then, now they use like an iPad, I guess, and they put the trades in. They input them. Years ago, what they would do is the traders would write everything on a ticket, almost like a waitress writing an order.
Right.
And they would just put them in rubber bands, and they'd be stacks of these things, and they would just throw them on the table, and hey, you got to input these right away because there's time constraints on these things.
Oh my God! And you were doing the inputting?
I was doing the inputting. So to this day, because I did that when I was very young, you put me in front of a typewriter, and I'll probably do 90-something words.
You're gonna crush.
I'll crush. I don't know how much use that has, that skill, but yeah.
Well, it'd be more impressive to even find a typewriter right now.
Yeah, I know. I put it like this. Sometimes I could make buttons fly off laptops.
You come strong.
Sometimes I'll tell my boss, hey, they would call it a hot swap. Hey, I need a hot swap. What's wrong with the keys are flying off this thing, man? They can't handle it.
I assume a lot of those tickets that were probably big deals for a lot of people, time sensitive, you looked at it and it just looked like fucking chicken scratch.
Oh yeah, and you
have to be able to, almost like how like a pharmacy has to read like a doctor's prescription.
That's it. But you know what? You learn the trader's bad handwriting. Like you get to know these guys. You're like, oh, that's this guy. He writes like shit, and you figure it out. So you know if it's an APY, and you're like, it doesn't look like an APY, but I know that's what he means. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was crazy, man. And then, you know, everything gets printed out. And then back then, it would be like a dot matrix printer. And then there'd be some poor guy that goes through everything on those printouts and checks it off with the ticket, looks at the ticket, looks at the printout, and makes sure that everything's inputted right.
So it gets written up. It gets input. The inputs get checked.
Yes.
So it's
all night.
It was efficient.
Yeah, you figure the market closes, and this dude is still checking out these printouts that are probably like 100 miles long, all night long. You know, just looking and cross-checking it.
Was that the shittiest job on the floor?
that had to be, dude. They had to be. It was always some poor young kid. You know, it'd be like probably like one of his first jobs. You know, and that's what he's doing.
Don't mess up.
Yeah.
Everything's riding on that kid.
Everything's right. But that's
the world economy is on like some 18-year-old kid. Right.
Oh, could you imagine? I mean, you input something wrong and it's big dollars, like a lot more than you understand when you're a young kid, like 18 years old, and you're doing that job and you screwed up a $500,000 trade.
I still don't understand the stock market, and I'm decades away from being a young kid. It still mystifies me a bit. I'm sure you can understand that. You probably had to explain, wait, what goes on? That you've probably had to explain that to countless people in your life.
Yeah, but
what's going on a trading floor? What is this?
Yeah, but to me it mystifies me too, because I don't completely understand it. You know, because I'm the guy inputting the stuff. But the way the only thing that I understand about the stock market is it's very fragile. You know what I'm saying? So things could be going great today. China could say, we're going to war with the United States. The market goes straight down because all this, everything's imported from over there. Now, we've got so much riding on the global partners. And that's as much as I understand about the stock market, that There's so many things. You know, if you're in a position of power, you run a company, and you say, hey, we're no longer going to do business with this guy. We're going to do it with this guy instead. Something as easy as that could impact your stock price or the entire market, depending on how important you are. You know, so it's a crazy thing, man.
Is that why we always play nice with China? Because they basically have sway over like a bulk of our economy?
Probably so. I mean, hey, listen, man, everything I have on is probably from there.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta play nice with that country, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've basically handed over our much of our day-to-day, much of our livelihoods and how we experience our day-to-day in stores and all this to their manufacturing processes.
I say play nice with everybody as long as they play nice with us. I mean, we all need each other. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. I don't know if I believe everything I see in the news when they say, oh, these guys are the enemy and, you know, now that guy's the enemy. Sometimes I feel like you just need an enemy. And there's not really a real enemy there, so they'll make one up. You know, so the way I see it, yeah, we should make things here. But at the same time, who cares what they're doing? You know, if they're doing right by us, then fine, man. Keep buying the stuff. If it's good, it's good, you know?
That's interesting. This idea of sometimes we need an enemy. That seems to be true.
Yeah.
I mean, even in trash talk wars and trade wars. I mean, obviously we're in real wars. We've been in parts of the Middle East now for 20 years. I don't know why we're there. I could not explain why there's still like American young people shooting off guns in Afghanistan. Like
Yeah.
I can't explain that. I don't know I haven't personally seen anyone attacking our country in a long time. I just don't see it. I don't know what this threat to quote unquote threat to democracy is all about. It's kind of a bummer, man. I mean, when I was growing up, we weren't in any wars.
Right.
You know, it's like the idea of Vietnam was sort of like the thing that had just passed, and that was hairy and fraught with, well, probably the fact that we shouldn't have been there in the first place, and how many people had died and how much suffering occurred there. My father was drafted into that war, although luckily he was stationed here in the States. But then this idea of getting re-involved in the Middle East, I guess that was maybe George Bush, the first George Bush. I remember, like, why is this happening? Like, what is this deal? Oil, Kuwait, Iraq, and then there's 9/11, and then somehow we're back in Iraq, even though Iraq doesn't appear to have anything to do with that. And I don't know how to explain it. And I've traveled, and people want to know. I'm sure you've experienced this more than me. You leave the country, and people are like, all right, well, what's going on? What's going on with your country's foreign policy? Like, I have no idea.
Well, the craziest thing, though, too, Mike, is that, you know, you'll watch the news and they'll tell you about, hey, you know, this country's bad country, terrorists, or this and that. As a musician, you travel the world, and you're gonna find great people all over the world. It's really tough as a musician to look at another country and say that's the enemy, because I could tell you now, I've met great people all over the world. And they're so alike, like you and I. Listen to the same bands, have the same activities that they'll do, you know, whether it's biking or exercise. You know, we're just people, you know what I mean? And everybody, I mean, we're not that much different, no matter where you're from.
Yeah, the issue is between governments.
Yeah. And
governments sometimes are and often are not representative of the people.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially I mean, I guess in many countries they have, you know, system. Well, we'll take China, for example. So, like, that's a system where it's like, look, this is the freaking government.
Right.
Like it, leave, or die. It's like,
yes.
It's like, this is what's up. Saudi Arabia. It's like, hey, look, this family, they're in charge forever unless something drastic happens. So there's a culture around that, and people still are just people out of that. And then you take a country like ours, which potentially every 4 years there's a different person on the pulpit spouting out whatever. I mean, but in the long game, 4 years is nothing.
Right.
Sometimes it's 8 years, sometimes it's 4 on our end, but the turnover is so frequent. Whereas culture doesn't change that fast. My opinion on anything doesn't change that fast. But the rest of the world sort of views us, oh, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? It's like, I don't know. In 3.5 years, there may be a completely different story. I don't know what to tell you. I still think this is a great country. Like, I have no like qualms with America in my day-to-day. I have qualms with certain aspects of the government, and I try and vote against them and occasionally get involved to work. But ultimately, the overall system for an average person is quite good.
Yeah,
I don't want to go to one of those other countries that we talked about and raise a family there.
No way, man. You know what, man? This is a great place if you shut off the news.
You gotta shut it off, dude. You gotta shut it off.
Yeah, just shut it off. You shut off the news, and you'll be calm, and you'll be loving life. You watch
just
the
say
news,
no.
you'll be screwed. Yeah,
we got to go back. What was that? Nancy Reagan, and all her brilliance and wisdom. Hey, kids, drugs. Just say no.
Yes,
it's that simple. So we're now suggesting you just say no to the news.
You know, she had to try something back in the day, though.
Oh, please. I mean, well, Ronald Reagan, he was kind of a rock star. I mean, he was a famous actor and then a governor of California. So he kind of had the Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of route. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, big time movie star. Well, you know, his bodybuilding rock stardom was prior to his movie stardom. Then governor of California, did not go for president, but you assume these folks are around a lot of stuff. Well, she was, if I remember correctly, Internet or Taylor, please correct me if I'm wrong, but she was also talking a lot about her astrological consultants.
Really?
So I don't know what's worse, to like, you know, get advice from predictable movements in the universe, or to, you know, hit some blow once in a while. Like I don't know.
Hey, I'll tell you this.
I don't know what's gonna fuck you up more.
I remember hearing a story, and I don't know. Maybe I got this mixed up. I remember hearing a story about Ronald Reagan on I don't know if it was Air Force One or a private jet, flying. Oh, maybe it was over Alaska or something like that, and saw a UFO. So, I don't know, she might have sent her astrological consultant a message to send him a messenger. I don't know, man.
I can't disprove
Maybe they got
that.
something going there, you know?
What are your feelings about life outside of the our little Goldilocks zone here on Earth? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it definitely exists, without a doubt. I've always felt it has. Look, we can't be that special. You know what I mean? There's no way that life can only happen here. You know, I believe that there's life. I believe that aliens do exist, and you know, as crazy as it might sound, like, you know, you see now videos of these UFOs and all that, and look, if it's not aliens, then it's military, and you know.
I always wonder. I'm like, if our military is confused by something, of course, who knows what the truth is? Like, we'll never know. We will never know what the CIA or the FBI, like those agencies, which I'm pretty sure run outside of the federal government. Like, I don't think it matters who the president is, or who a congresswoman is.
Well, it's like we were saying before, presidents in for 4 to 8 years. These people that are in government are in there they have lifelong careers. You know what I mean? So if you're in the CIA or the FBI, you're not going to just do a 4-year or 8-year stint. You're looking to make that your life. Yeah. You know more than the president, probably. You know what I mean?
I don't doubt it. I mean, all of the biggest operations that eventually get either declassified, the little bit I've read, most of these things were operating way outside of the president and the Congress and the Senate making any decisions.
Right.
Noam Chomsky's book, Manufacturing Consent, I think that's the book. He talks about a lot of the covert operations in El Salvador and all these other countries decades ago. These things were just covert operations running outside of probably what the federal government was even aware of. I don't know. It's pretty interesting to me. I agree with you. I think there's probably life somewhere, but I can't think about, like, my head gets scrambled when I think about how far away that's happening. And you think about the universe and you try to imagine billions of years. It's like I could barely imagine my own lifetime, which is a grain of sand compared to all the humans who have ever lived. And we're nothing compared to geologic time.
Right. You see, the thing is, though, you know, to many people, it may sound far-fetched when you think about other beings from other planets. It's too, you know, they'll say, oh, you know, these planets are too far away. There's no way they could get here. But the thing is that it only seems that way because technologically we don't understand it yet. We can't fathom it. But when you have the government putting out videos showing what these things do, you have to say to yourself, well, if it is our government, how did they learn how to do this? You know, and the only way it could possibly be is some type of reverse engineering, because you actually found the real thing before. You know what I mean? So it sounds crazy, but then again, 10 years ago, if you would have told me that the Pentagon was going to be putting alien videos out to the news outlets, I would have told you were crazy, and it's happening now. So,
dude, it's impossible to know. But it appears as though, I mean, the building blocks of life for our planet were only a few essential elements.
Yeah.
Elements that exist in other parts of the universe. What? Nitrogen. I don't even know. What? Nitrogen, methane. There's like a couple like building blocks of, you know, right after the Big Bang or whatever. And, you know, billions of years to get to even an atmosphere that can produce oxygen, and things could get out of the water to even breathe the oxygen. Whereas prior to that, maybe the lungfish was the first thing to be poking its head out of the water and using oxygen and create lungs as a life source. Prior to that, oxygen was toxic to things that were living prior to that. So everything had to stay in the water. I did some reading on this recently, and so it's not just that humans cropped up in this small period, but really it was leading up to that. But if geologic time is as vast and as infinite as we think it is, there could totally be many other areas that had their own billion years.
If in another planet, if you know, if oxygen isn't dominant, let's say something else, I don't know, let's say it's nitrogen, maybe that's what they breathe. Yeah. You know, why do they have to be exactly like us?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't have to be. I mean, I think life is one of those things where depending on where it happens, it's going to use those elements that are available and abundant to it. If it happens somewhere else and there's different elements there in abundance, that's what that life is going to take and use to survive. You know, the same way if you go all the way down to the bottom of the ocean and you got these heating vents coming out and it's like, I don't know, let's say it's 300 degrees down there and there's life breeding all around it. But if you were there, you'd be dead in seconds. You know what I mean?
Julie and I, we took a trip out to Wyoming. I don't know when, pre-kids, PK.
Right.
PK days, PKD. And we got some crude maps of, hey, if you do this hike, there's these warm springs and you can go and swim in these. They're not hot springs. Hot spring will kill you. But warm springs, it's like, well, it's warm. And the occasional like bloop. And this water is like, it doesn't even look like water. And we found this warm spring, and I don't think anything can live in it. And it has that kind of methane smell.
Like farts.
Let's be real. It's farty water. Yes, it's farty water. And, you know, the occasional bubbles coming up. And it was it was so scary. I was such a wuss. I'm like, I don't want to go in. And meanwhile, you know, like, all right, nothing can live in this. This is totally toxic for life. You know, it's not like you're putting your head under and drinking the water. But to swim in it, it was kind of scary and really beautiful at the same time. Out in Wyoming, we were at Jackson Hole. You know Dave Johnson.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Dave hooked us up with a little trip out there. He was living out there, still is. What's up, Dave, if you watch this show? He's cutting hair.
Yeah,
out there.
I seen that. Follow him on Instagram.
What's the name of the store? I want to give a shout out. Jackson Hole Barber Shop. No, I don't know. I'm not trying to joke, but if you need your haircut out there, I bet you Dave Johnson will give you a nice cut in Jackson Hole.
Jersey boy over there.
Jersey boy. It's gorgeous out there. That was the same day we did a hike, and we were maybe a 80-yard distance, but just a whole pack of bison or buffalo. I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah.
And you keep a healthy distance. It's like a bunch of little SUVs out there. They're huge.
Yeah.
And it was so gorgeous. And then as we hiked up this bluff, hundreds of elk antler. So I'm like trying to take these antlers back on the in my luggage.
It probably looks cool as hell. I mean, what do we got here? Squirrels and squirrels, and what are those things? Turkey vultures.
Ugly. Oh, poor turkey vultures.
Oh man.
They need help in the worst way, and they're eating dead stuff. They got nothing going for them. They don't even care.
I know.
They're like the guar of of the animal kingdom.
Look, I grew up in the city, so to me, I never saw a turkey vulture or even a groundhog until I came out here. And I remember one day I'm driving through Wall, and I see turkey vultures fighting on the asphalt for whatever was dead on there. And then I look up and I see this tree, and it's a whole crew. There was probably like 20 turkey vultures on there, and the two fighting on the asphalt were probably the gang leaders. I don't know.
Yeah, they're the guys who are just waiting for their cue to jump in.
Yeah. But I'm like, what the hell is this? So I tell Casey, my wife, I say, what are those things? Vultures? You know what I mean? But apparently they're turkey somehow. Why are they turkey vultures? Is it because they taste like turkey?
I've never eaten one. I wouldn't recommend eating something that only eats dead shit.
Yeah, no.
But then again, I mean, let's be honest. If it's like end times, and you and I are kind of just like hobbling down Route 195, we're gonna light up a turkey vulture and eat it.
Oh, forget it, dude. Definitely.
And that's probably when we die from some godforsaken intestinal illness.
I think you and I, we'd be like roaches. We'd be lasting.
We're pretty tough. Speaking of pretty tough, tell me about how you got into how'd you get into the hardcore scene? So for those watching and listening, I mean, names of genres of music get tossed around, and they mean something to some people, and then they mean nothing to others, and they're like, well, what type of this are you talking about? It's infinitely divisible. I'm talking about the scene that I came up in the early 90s. It was just called the hardcore scene. There weren't really too many factions yet. You came up in a similar scene, except very New York.
Yes.
There was a specific sound coming out of New York that was definitely not coming out of the shore area that I was making music in and creating in and listening to bands in it. And all that was certainly very different from anything that was going on the West Coast.
Right.
So New York had, with all respect, I would call it the tough guy hardcore approach.
Yeah.
We were not playing tough guy hardcore. That was for the New Yorkers, your crew. How did you get involved in all that, and what's to be said for my take on that's the tough guy version of hardcore?
Well, as far as it being the tough guy version, I think that it's New York was tough, so you're talking about like the 80s and the 90s, and I think that the hardcore scene, the kids were a product of their environment. So, if you've got to be tough to survive, it's going to reflect in your music. It's definitely going to come out. But, as far as me finding hardcore, I found it, believe it or not, before I was officially into it, in 1984, I met Hoya, who plays in Madball. So he was in my 6th grade class. I met him before I was his neighbor. So, the funny thing is that we're both in class, and one day I say to him, hey, listen, I'm moving to a new house. Do you want to walk with me to my new place? And he says, yeah, sure, I'll take a walk with you. So we're walking, and I say, hey, you know what? I think this is my block. And he says, get out of here, really? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, I live across the street. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great because, me and him are shooting the shit hanging in school all the time, And, fast forward, now I'm hanging out at his house, and his older brother was Alleyway Crew. Sick of it all, rest in pieces, all those guys. And I'd go into Hoya's house, and I hadn't heard hardcore or punk rock. To me, punk rock was like Joan Jett or something like that. Like, I was young, I was 11, you know what I mean? So I could hear the stuff coming out of his room, but it was early punk hardcore, like GBH, Discharge, Broken Bones, really heavy stuff. And then, with that, then I'd hear the occasional Black Sabbath coming out of there. And he would just come out of his room to go to the bathroom and go right back in there. And then he's listening to music. And I'm like intrigued because this music sounds to me, I'm like, this stuff is cool, And through him, eventually, once I did get to meet him and hang out with him, I told him, I said, hey, could you make me some tapes? Record me some of the stuff that you listen to. Back then you had a cassette. I'd give him like 3 Maxwell tapes or TDKs, and he'd record me a bunch of stuff, And that's how it started. And then, Hoya and I would be talking in school, and we'd say, you know what, man, we should start a band someday. And originally he was like, I'll play. He says he'll play bass, and I said, well, you know what? I'll play drums. But we're talking New York. I had nowhere to put the drum set. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because you're living in multifamily homes. So I said, you know what? Maybe what I'll do is I'll get a guitar. So I'm begging my mom, that this is probably, I want to say, fast forward, I want to say that the guitar came up in like maybe 87 or 88, somewhere around there. And my mom goes to a Fingerhut catalog, shows me a Harmony Fender knockoff, a Strat, with the single coils. And she says, you want me to get you that guitar? And I said, I'll take anything, And, I got that guitar, and it had like the tremo verb and stuff, and you really couldn't get a heavy sound out of it for shit. And I remember I would start jamming out. Me and Hoya would start playing, and we'd be playing like, remember the theme Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse? Stuff like that. And then I would hear bands like Slayer, and I'd be like, I want to get that sound. Why can't I get it? I didn't know how to palm mute. And, I would start meeting people in school. One kid tells me, hey, listen, man, I play guitar. And I'd be like, you need to come over to my house. And the kid would come over to my house, and then I'm watching him, and he palm mutes, and I go, oh, shit. I got to learn how to do that. And then eventually I figured out that, my guitar wasn't equipped for playing that type of music. So I was so broke. So I would tell, one of my buddies would say, oh, I got a guitar body. And I'd say, oh, really? Let me have it. Another guy would say, I got a Fender Squier neck. And I'd be like, oh, I'll take it. And then I'd run to Sam Ash in Forest Hills, Queens, and I'd buy like some like generic pickup. And then I just wired all together and start playing. And with my first band with Hoya was Dmize. And that's how we started doing it, with like cheap guitars. We didn't have amps, but his mother used to let her friend's Mexican band store their gear in the basement. So in his basement, there would be these weird amps that were not made for the stuff we wanted to play. They'd be a drum set, and we'd be down there killing it on that gear. I'd buy like a Boss heavy metal pedal because I needed something to just drive that amp really hard. And that pedal sounds like shit, but it did the job.
Yeah. Well, when you're starting out, you're just happy to get something that has some, what you consider heavy at the time. I remember I had the same path. You meet the person who can do the thing. Oh, hey, you want to come over? Can I come over to your house? What do you need? I'll pick up pizza. Like, you figure out a way to inject yourself into that scenario, or bribe that person to come into your realm. And then people are everyone's kind. Most people are kind. They'll show you what they know. Like, oh, that's called a palm mute. Here's how you do it. And then if you're anything like me, you learned it, and you're like, oh, thanks. And then you did that for 3 weeks in your bedroom by yourself, nonstop, until it was decent. and then you're like, I got this.
Yeah,
Maybe not even decent.
And the great thing about hardcore is that growing up where we grew up, there was guys in our neighborhood that were in these real good hardcore bands. So, you know, I had one guy, Rob, that played in Rest in Pieces and Straight Ahead. He lived maybe like 3 blocks away, I'm guessing, like down Corona Avenue. And I would see this guy walking up Junction Boulevard to take the 7 train to go to band practice all the time with his gig bag. And I would listen to the records that he would play on, and I'd say, you know what, man? It's doable. Somebody in my neighborhood could play guitar like that. That means I could do it too. You know, and that's the thing with the hardcore scene in New York, is that it was easily accessible. It wasn't like with, like, you know, let's say with if you get into Iron Maiden when you're a kid, your chances of meeting Bruce Dickinson were like slim to none.
They were playing like those guys.
Yeah.
Like that music's badass.
Yeah.
Slayer too, but it's like I can't hang with that.
Yeah, and even if you could, though, when you're young, it's more inspiring when you actually see the people you look up to in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? So I love Iron Maiden, I love Slayer, I love all those bands. But those guys it was almost like looking at a movie star on a poster, and you'd say, oh, you know, I'm never going to meet that person. Which, you know, eventually you probably will if your band gets big enough. But
well, Maiden, I mean, will be, are like larger than life. Like they created something. I don't know what it is. I don't even listen to that music hardly ever, but I have so much respect.
Yes.
It's like just Eddie, right?
Yeah.
The fucking Eddie,
they
the creature.
Dude, we actually, when I was in Madball, we actually played with him. We played a festival. And somewhere in my house, I mean, I don't know now because, you know, the physical pictures, we put stuff away in boxes. But somewhere in the house, I have pictures of like the animatronic, like Eddie and all that stuff. Because, you know, we'd be walking around the stage and we're like, oh shit, look, that's the Eddie machine, whatever the hell it is.
There's the hand.
Yeah. We take pictures and bring it home, you know what I mean? But
how did you get the gig opening for them? That must have been massive.
Oh yeah, amazing. Well, what happens is in Europe in the summertime they have the festival seasons. So during the festival season, you'll get to play with a lot of bands, big bands. Like I've played with Slayer and, you know, Iron Maiden, probably a bunch of other bands. There's so many bands on the bills that I forget how many. Like I looked at one bill from a festival that I played. I saw Testament played it, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I don't remember that, and that sucks because I'm a big fan. There's a chance that I might have had to play and leave and go to the next show. I mean, who knows? But I'm like, I would have loved to have seen them, and I didn't see it. But that's how we got the Iron Maiden gig, was playing the festival, and they were amazing, man. And at that time, they already had 3 guitars. So this might have been like maybe like 2000, 1999 or 2000. They had like 3 guitars, which was pretty cool to watch because the stuff they do on the record sounds exact now live. Because now you got the 2 guys doing the harmony and you got the guy doing the rhythm, you know?
That's nuts.
Yeah.
They're another level. And so I've had so much good fortune and luck as a human and as an artist, but I've never played on like stadium stages or festival stages. Like I've played some big crowds. I've done everything I've wanted to do in life. I haven't done that. What's the big jump about getting on a stage like that or in front of that many people? What did you instantly notice? Or maybe you noticed nothing. What are the differences, if any, in kind of making that jump from, you know, shitty clubs or even like larger spaces, but then like that? And usually outdoors too, which is a whole different vibe.
Yeah, it's the first big festival that I played, believe it or not, I believe was the Dynamo Festival, and the headliner was Metallica. We had our own stage. I think they called it like a skate stage or something like that. But still, when you looked out, I mean, I don't know. All I saw was heads. I'm thinking it was probably, I don't know, maybe 50,000, something crazy like that. I just remember automatically feeling like tingling. You know what I mean? It's as far as you don't really, the people are kind of far out, but there's tons of people and you get this crazy euphoric feeling. But it's not like you get nervous, because I think it's more intimate when you're inside a club and everybody's right there. That sometimes would make me a little bit more nervous. But the feeling to get on that stage and playing, and you hit a chord and there's monitors way out there in the middle of the field, and you hear your guitar punch back, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
Did you have to play differently? Did you notice your
because of the
guitar playing? Would it have to change based on the venue?
You know what? I don't think that I've ever changed my playing, although maybe I should have. Maybe I didn't know that I should because I was young. But I think there are places, like sometimes when you play outdoors, where you get some weird delay effect when you're playing. Me, myself, though, I never changed the way that I played. But I could see some people maybe saying, yeah, that they would change. The only thing I've ever changed is I have a sound for when I play live, and I have a sound for when I record. And when I play live, I want a more organic sound, especially because I know that if my amp is cranked when I'm playing in a live setting, I'm getting more natural gain out of the tubes. But I don't want it to be so saturated that I can't play tight. So if I'm playing live, I'll use less gain so that I can play tighter, lock it in with the drums. It's just a lot easier. Like I see a lot of young kids, they'll get their amp and they'll crank the gain to 10, and then it sounds like a lot of fizz. And
that's just a young person's folly. That's like pretty common. When I have to break that to people constantly, like, what I'm about to say is gonna sound wrong, but you'll get a lot heavier if you cut that gain in half. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Crank those mids and take that gain down about 60%.
Exactly.
But then, of course, it forces like a technique thing. And then if your technique's not tight.
But that's how you get a good right hand. Your technique, that's right. Something that I've taught my son, because now my son has his band. And one thing I did with him was, I told him right up front, I said, hey, listen, he uses a PV6505. I said, listen, I know all the other kids are going to use that red channel. They're going to crank that gain. I'm like, you play live, use that green channel, hook up a tube screamer just to give it a mid hump, and play tight. And people are going to say that you sound amazing. Amazing. Yeah. And
everything else is going to sound either like woof, or what did you say, like that sizzle?
Yeah, you get that.
That's the worst. That's the worst.
Well, you can't look if it has no body and no punch to it because it's so saturated. How do you hear yourself in a live setting with all the noise that's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want something that's going to cut right through.
I learned that early on. Well, maybe not. Probably too late. I was definitely diming gain and trying to get the most saturation. It was probably less on the sizzly side and more on just too much woof. But then we got another guitarist in the band at the time, Mike Turner, and I was like, damn, he is shitting on my tone. And I'm like, yeah, I thought it was the guitar. I thought it was the type of amp, but really it was just mid-range and gain. And I'm like, fuck. I got my mids on 0 and my gain cranked. He had his gain like as low as it'll go to still get a heavy attack.
Yeah, and you were going the Metallica route back in the day where
I was going with every route I could scramble and put together. I came into it like random. Came at Mark and his crew literally found me at a diner. And they're like, you want to be in a band? I'm like, yes, I do. Yeah. Like, what does that mean?
Hey, dude, you want to be in the band?
it was pretty much like, Bubba?
Yeah,
it was Bubba. Bubba approached me. Yeah, we heard you play guitar. Meanwhile, I think my only guitar playing prior to that was with my mother in church. So they must have been so desperate to have. Playing music wasn't really cool.
How did they know you played? Did they
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I can't see Bubba in church.
I don't know. It's really a good question. I don't think I mean, maybe I was doing some solo like coffee house thing. I might have been branching out and playing some very sensitive coffee house situations, because I came up learning folk music and learning church hymnals. It was just a way to get proficient on an acoustic guitar. I never played electric. I did not know how to palm mute or what a power chord was. I could just play some weepy fucking folk shit.
Right.
Which sounded great. And I could sing, sort of, because my mom was a singer. My mom was a guitarist. So she's just like, I'll show you what I know. And then you're on your way. So I think there was just such a drought of players.
Yeah.
That they're like, get the church guy.
He plays.
And then that was it. That changed my life.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes it's when I see it with my son, because they have lineup changes in the band, and they'll find somebody they think is cool, and let's say he needs a bass player, but the guy's a drummer, and my son will be like, yeah, but he's a cool dude. You know what? We'll take him as a bass player because he's our age and he's cool. You know what I mean? And they'll just learn as it goes, because you find people that you think are cool, around the same age, you got the same things in common. It's great when you're a kid.
It's great, man, because you don't even know if you suck.
Yeah.
It's great. The bassist we drafted wasn't even a musician. I just remember saying, I want my best friend in the group. Shout out to Bill Jewell. I was like, and he's like, yeah, I'll play bass. Yeah, I'll play an instrument.
He's like, how many strings are on
the
bass?
I'm like, there's less. It's easier.
Yeah, it's easier.
And he bought a bass, and I'm like, look, I'll teach you the songs. You should be in the band.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because he was in the band, and he totally stood out. He wasn't like the typical kind of hardcore kid. He was a young professional, even at a young age.
Yeah.
And then when it came time, we signed and we were going to go on tour. He's like, dude, I can't leave college. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to leave. Just go back. Like, when it's over, you go back.
Yeah.
And that was not anything about what his life was about. So he called it, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. Hey, I've gone on tours where I would see guys from other band members would just leave, and say, this is not for me. And some guys, I need to go to school. I got to go to college or something like that, and just do it. And, what are you going to do? Their dream is different than than your dream. You know what I mean?
It's one of those things, too, that nobody can explain. Taking a leap and going from just making recordings on your own or playing local shows or even being a big fish in a small pond.
Right.
Nobody can explain what the leap from that to going on the road is. Like, you just have to do it and survive and then decide, okay, is this for me? And if it isn't, why? And if it is, you still have to make 1,000 tweaks to make it more tolerable, because it really is like, it's very hard to be like cooped up with people for a long period of time, and especially in a less organized or early on phase. It's like no money. You're just like, it's like an endless weird camp.
And if you end up on tour and you're in like a foreign country, you don't like the food, you're used to eating mom's cooking, and they're like, throw some type of meat on the plate, and you're like, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean?
I remember those days, man. You're just like, well, we have this much money. I remember we bought a big vat of peanut butter and just tons of bread. So like that was covered. And then like, of course, you can get your booze calories everywhere because everyone's trying to fuck you up all the time. So you might as well just keep your mouth open.
Giving you the Weizen beer.
That's right.
Tons of calories. You by the time you get home, you got a friggin' gut like that.
My guitar used to lay flat, but now I could see the pickups very easily.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, because I vividly remember, and this was later in my music career, I remember playing a show with the Dropkick Murphys when I was in Madball, and we had done a lot of touring, and I remember strapping my guitar on and noticing that my upper belly was pushing it out. And I said, holy shit, man, I don't remember this feeling
I like how
before.
you called it your upper belly.
It was a weird, it was like my belly was like out here and then going down. And I'm like, this is like, I got to readjust my strap.
What kind of muscle is this?
Yeah, you're like this. What is this, one ab in the middle or something? You know? But yeah, a lot of, what's that, rest stop eating and booze, you know?
Yeah, you turn into the most unhealthy person instantly. That's why I have so much respect for a lot of the real road dogs out there and people who have done it forever and are just not dead.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Like Keith Richards.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like how, because everything out there is kind of designed. I mean, I don't know what it's like to be at Rolling Stones level. You know, I mean, you got your own trainer and chef on the road with you. Yeah. But like for average Joe and Jane out there on tour, it's just crap food and then like drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
It's just not great for your health.
Just imagine for a lot of these like straight edge vegetarian bands, you know, back then, and let's say the early 90s, and you go to Europe and everything they're trying to give you is processed meat. You know?
Everything is a sausage.
Yeah, everything's a sausage
and a
of
drink.
some sort. Yeah.
It's beer and meat.
Yeah. I could imagine. Those guys must have came back like this.
They were already like that.
Yeah. They come back and they're like starved. They're like, oh my God.
I was talking to somebody about that recently. I was talking to a friend of mine who was the former, I think he was like the tour manager for a little bit of the Bouncing Souls. And we were just talking about them and Pete earlier today. And he said there was a guy on the road with them who he was like the most prepared vegan. Like every day his pockets were just...
He had a utility belt.
He basically had a nutrition belt.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, it's going to be, another 6 hours until the next stop. Or, hey, that place is only making bratwurst. Yeah. And he's like, no problem. And he said there's always just this guy. He always had like the bananas and like everything was on tap. And he stayed like... He was the only dude who could like just hang in and be healthy and live that lifestyle, which I can't relate to. I've never been a vegan or a vegetarian or straight edge or anything. And it was hard enough. So he was saying, oh yeah, you can do it, but it's not easy. So he knew the guy.
He knew. Yeah. Now it's easy, I think. Back then it had to be terrible. Funny story. I remember one time on the road, asking for a hamburger. And this is when I was young and I was full on. If you told me don't eat meat, I'm like, you're out of your mind. I'm eating meat, You
just do it.
Yeah, just do it, So this guy gives me some vegetarian burger and it was no ketchup. It was like gouged in like, it looked like beets. It had like seeds. It was like purple. And I was like, oh man, I can't eat this. I said to the guys, like, there's no way I'm going to eat that. What is that thing, And then I remember the guy going, don't worry, Beto. I'm going to get you meat. And the guy comes back. This poor guy, man, what the hell I put him through. He comes back with a freaking sausage on a fork, and he's running down the street. Beto, oh, I got your meat. I'm like, what the hell?
You were like a caveman at that point.
I was like, yeah. Now, honestly, Casey's vegetarian. My older son's vegetarian, so I eat vegetarian all the time. As much as I can. I still eat meat, but I eat vegetarian. I'd say it's like half and half.
Well, yeah, you got to bend to what's going on in the family, or else it's just too complicated.
Yeah. Plus, it is better. I would never argue that. I mean, eating processed meats and steak all the time, it can't be good.
Yeah, I don't know.
Tastes good.
I'm conflicted about all that. I generally eat well, but it's because of my wife. Like she chooses, for the most part, what food is in the house.
Right.
Regardless of whether she's shopping for it or not. She kind of lays down the law, and it's hard to know.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. Like I was never like too much an overeater for anything, like any specific type of food, but probably left to my own devices, I'd probably be.
You'd be, yeah. If you
were
a
single, attack or two in.
Yeah, if you were single, you'd be a mess.
Oh, well, she still likes to tell the story of what my refrigerator looked like when we met.
Oh,
she's
man.
Like, Michael, it was only condiments. That's it. She's like, well, what are you eating? And she realized the stove which was an electric stove. She's like, your stove isn't even plugged in. I said, I've never used it. She said, what are you doing? I said, well, 2 to 3 times a week, I order out. She's like, well, maybe that's a little bit much, but okay. And I said, but I order a lot. And it lasts for like, each order out is 2 days of food, basically. And I would just sort of chop it up. And as long as I have my condiments, apparently, I'm good.
But you were busy. I remember years ago, you were very busy with music, doing stuff constantly. So I'm guessing that the reason for the shitty diet was because you were never home.
I think I'm just a loser. I can't put an excuse on that. I just never thought about it. I grew up in a traditional Italian American household where everyone was a killer cook. Usually the women. Yeah. So like my mother and my grandmothers, between the 3 of them, you could walk down the block in your house next town over, and there was going to be some food that they had made just sitting around because they were just like cooking was such a part
you were
of
spoiled.
I was spoiled, bro. Yeah. And then I remember at some point, my brother was always interested in cooking, so he would always dabble. My father had to get involved. Like I think maybe like right around the time when I went to high school, shit was really tight. So like my mom had to start working, and then like my dad maybe did a little bit of cooking. It just never trickled down to me to handle a meal. I was always taken care of, and most of the time expertly by by my mom or my grandmothers, these Italian American experts. I mean,
good stuff.
I mean, come on, Italian food, come on.
I could eat it every day. Yeah.
We'd be dead, but we could eat it every day. I mean, I like a lot of cuisines, but Italian cuisine is just fucking great.
I know. So
I was spoiled as hell, as you say. That's true. And it never trickled down to me to be able to take care of myself. And when I left the house, I went to college, and I had my little meal card. So I was like, and then left college and living in apartments. It just I never plugged in the oven.
Wow, that's
She's like, this isn't plugged in. What happened? I was like, oh, it plugs in? Like,
you're living on Doritos, man.
I'm a lucky guy. I'm lucky. I get my genes. I was able to be really unhealthy for a long time, and it didn't severely fuck me up. I have really high metabolism too, I guess I'm able to burn a lot of junk. It's a lot slower than it used to be, of course, because I'm an old guy now.
Well, we're middle-aged now.
Middle-aged.
That's crazy, right?
Shit, man. Tell me about your newest band, Ayanyss.
Ayanyss. So.
And can we listen to? You mentioned that there's a record out, but you're not on it. Can you?
Exactly. Yeah. So
you're not honest.
I'm not on the Ayanyss record. No. So, Ayanyss is the original singer. The singer from my first band, Dmize. He was the second singer in that band. His name is Cheeky. Frank, that was in 25 to Life with me. He was my bass player for an amount of time there. John, the drummer, we kind of just met. So Cheeky, Frankie and I, we've known each other since we were teenagers. What happened was they started the band originally with Harry Minas, who used to play in 25 to Life, and with Nick Benetos, who used to be the guitarist in his band called Cold Front from Astoria, Queens. And those guys recorded this record, but I believe they did this pre-COVID. By the time the lockdown ended, they decided, they were kind of done with it. They said, you know what, we really don't want to play live. Why don't you guys just get somebody else to do it, to do the shows? So they called me up and they said, hey, are you willing to play guitar? I said, yeah, sure.
And it's your boys.
Yeah, they're my childhood friends. So these are guys that when I'm in a room with them, it's like we've never stopped hanging out.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's the best.
Yeah. So I said, to help my friends out, I said, yeah, definitely. That'd be my pleasure, And, right now we're basically getting ready to play some shows, So I think September 12th is one of our first shows. After that, I think there's one cooking for some time in maybe November or December, I believe.
What's up?
Yeah.
Ayanyss for all you folks out there. Ayanyss. I was listening to the record today. The guitars sound good.
Yeah, yeah.
I like the tone. Is that a similar tone to what you're going to add in the live? I just thought the guitar tone stood out. Sounded nice.
Nick is a good guitar player, and I'm not going to change the sound they have. So now, the funny thing is that Nick has always had that sound, because I remember, when we used to play together and he was in Coldford, that's the sound he would use.
Oh, is that right?
And I used to use the more saturated sound because I
was
didn't know what the hell I was doing.
It's that open. To my ears, it had that open tubey kind of vibe.
Yeah, more organic. Yeah,
it was not compressed too hard, and it was like,
it's a great sound. Now, my older age, that's the sound I use anyway. so it fits. I mean, I fit right in. We went to the studio, started playing. I'm listening to the songs. I'm like, it sounds just like the record. So, that's a good thing. If they would have, I think if they would have approached me in the '90s, I would have been the wrong guy for the job.
You're like, that guitar is not heavy enough.
I said, I'd be like, put that gain on 11.
You better tighten that up, bro.
Yeah, you gotta palm mute a lot more.
I know, it sounded really good. That's the first thing that jumped out was that sound, and I said, oh, that's cool. So what's your main go-to rig these days? Let's geek out for a moment. What do you prefer to go to? Just for the average, not session versus gig, just across the board. What's your sound these days?
These days, I use what most kids use these days. I use I do run a PV 5150 or a 6505 through a Mesa Boogie 4x12 oversized cab. You would think that
those things are huge.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But they get the combination of the vintage 30s. With that bigger cab, you get that mid-range projection.
That's nice.
With a good low end, but you got to know to tame the low end because it could get a little crazy sounding, if you don't EQ it the right way. But I use that. I've got an ESP Viper and an Eclipse and a Jackson Soloist, and that's what I usually play through, and a Tube Screamer with a noise gate,
As a boost.
The Tube Screamer's a boost. Yeah, I go, like I was saying before, I go straight into the green channel. And on the green channel, I could crank the gain to like 6 because that channel is more like, I guess it was supposed to be Eddie Van Halen's like brown sound. It's more organic sounding.
Yeah.
And I get a sound where I feel that it's not very gainy. It depends on how hard I play. The harder I play, the more gain I'm going to get out of it. Yeah, that's how I want it. I want the guitar to respond to how hard I'm playing it.
That's the best when you get to that amount of time of playing.
That you figure that out,
and you
right?
figure it out. It's like, I'm sure there's kids now they learn it on day one, from a YouTube clip. But I'm like, man, it took me like 15 years to dial it in.
The funny thing about it though is that when I was a kid, there was older guys trying to teach me this. And I would look at them and I'd say, this freaking guy, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's out of his mind.
I got my heavy metal pedal, bro. Yeah. What the fuck?
I'm like, bro, I don't play an AC/DC. You know what I mean? And the thing is, they were right. I was wrong. So, like, now, I would say maybe like 15. No, I started using the Tube Screamer, I'd say, in like late 90s. But I still was using a little bit too much gain on the amp. But what's funny is that now I say to myself, I'm like, if I only knew then what I know now, if I wasn't like a prick, and I thought I knew it all, I would have sounded so much better, But I guess that's part of growing up, As you get older, you say to yourself, you know what, I was wrong, and this is how you get a good sound. So I think that, I try to teach younger kids now, like with my son's friends, I try to show them, and I'm like, I hope that because I'm his father, they don't look at me the way I used to look at those other guys and be like, get the hell out of here, dude, you don't know what you're talking about, and it helps them out a little bit. I know my son figured it out. He knows what I'm saying.
Well, when you can put it in context, like, hey, next time you jam with the band, do this and then switch to this and just sit back and see who's jumping out, what sound is jumping out more. And unless you're completely unable to hear, you're going to get it. But, it's something about how he delivered the message, too.
Yeah.
Old guy, you know what you should do.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Instantly, you're already like, okay, well, I've already tuned you out, sir.
Yeah.
But speak if you like.
The funny thing about it is that at the last show my son played a few weeks ago, right? I'm helping him set up, right? So I go to the green channel and I'm like, hit a chord. He hits it, he's palm muting. And then I go, tell me if you like this better. And I switch it to the red channel and he it's all saturated. He goes, no. Switch it back to the other one. And I'm like, you learn, man.
Well, it's
I felt like Miyagi.
It was a total Miyagi moment.
Yeah.
You know, put the thing in the hand.
Yeah.
Whereas typically we're just telling, like I do it with my kids all the time. I'm not always like showing them the difference because I don't have the time.
Right.
I'm just telling them and saying, trust me, which is, I guess, the same as saying, fuck you, don't listen to me, go on with your day. I'm
right.
silly old guy. But if you take the time to actually let someone see, experience, feel, taste, touch, listen to the difference between things, yeah, then at least they made their own choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that point. But yeah, it takes a long time to learn these lessons.
Yeah, it took me a very long time, it's and I'm sure, I know you mentioned something about picking up on some of these things too later on in life. And when you look at the younger you and you're like, man, I wish I could just go back and just tell that dude, listen, this is how it's done.
Yeah, but then we wouldn't be here now.
That's true.
We don't want to be a bunch of Uncle Ricos. Fuck that. Hey, let's leave it at that. Actually, before we leave it, give a shout out to your son's band.
Oh yes, yeah. Check out my son's band, Reaching Out. They sound great. They should be playing. I believe they're playing August 15th at the A7 in New York.
Great.
So
Reaching Out, New Jersey hardcore, Ayanyss, current hardcore. If those guys, a lot of those guys from New York, like, is it New Jersey or New York, or does it not matter?
Two guys in Queens, and then 2 guys are in Jersey. So New York, New Jersey, we got it connected there.
Beto Rosario, thanks for coming on the show, brother. I'm really glad we got to make this happen. I love talking with you. You're a good friend, man. I love you.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I love you too, brother.
All right, bro. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you. Oh, before we go, I want to give a special thank you to Taylor Sniffen, who's been doing the audio and video for this show since the beginning. She's the OG of this show, along with me, and she's moving on to other things, so we're going to find someone else. But Taylor, thanks, and good luck to you. All right, goodbye.